a day talking about this on the day we crack 1,000.
It was planned that way.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things. If I'm deliberately trying to write something from scratch and I'm sitting at my keyboard, or piano, I would just start playing and I'd find a little progression that I like. And it's normally very typical of some sort of pop, very common progression. And I would just use that. And I love atmosphere, and pads are just easy to build from. I also have hundreds of ideas in my phone because I'll just hear something and it will be some sort of vocal hook, like a sentence or just a line that's sung, and it's almost as if I can hear it fully produced, but it's got like a high pass or low pass, maybe both, filter on it because it's so far in the distance, but I can hear it, and it's almost like that's the finished product and it's in the distance and I can hear it and I know what it needs to be. And so I've got to go back and then work it out from scratch to get it to that point. That's my two ways, is starting from scratch, starting from something and then writing on top of it. The other way, where I'll start with my hook, I guess, and be like, right, I know, so I've got all these like 10-second long voice memos in my phone, and sometimes you can hear them with the chords. I don't know if you guys are like that, but you hear them with the chords, but you don't have an instrument. So you're literally just like out in a car parking lot somewhere. And then you go back and listen
Just
to it later. And
down real
like,
low.
there is no context. I can't hear what I was meaning at all. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. That's probably my favorite way of writing, because I know that it's something and it's plucked out of obscurity somewhere, and I just have to build it from the start to make it turn into that. And I find the lyrics the hardest, because the melody and the music is where all the feeling is. And even singing, you could sit there and like sing and put all your emotions in, and the words really don't have to matter for me anyway. And then to have to add words in is just, it's like, oh, extra work. Now I've got to also make like English literature work with rhyming and near rhymes, and and make it appealing and relatable and fit the theme and clever, and simple without overcomplicating it. So I find that part the most annoying. Like, I could write a song in an afternoon or whatever, but the words could take me weeks and weeks and weeks. I think I just had that line, "Thank God you stay." And for me, it was just about writing about, who are you writing about? Who would I be so grateful for that stuck around and never, ever failed me, ever? That is such an unrealistic notion or thing to put on a person, because as humans, that's just a lot to put on someone. And for me, the only thing that ever would be consistent like that would be to talk about God, because I don't think that that's too much for your God, or whoever that is, to have that expectation of. And so to write a song that was kind of like gratifying that, and just being, I felt free the moment I decided to sing about that. It was like, that was freedom, because then nothing's too much. Because part of me was like, oh, I try and write things so that they could be about other things as well, like if it's about loss or a breakup, or if it's about losing someone, it could be about a breakup, not, so I tried to write it so that it could be a love song, but it's still quite intense as a love song. If you were to sing that to a person, it would be like, whoa, obsessed much, like. So for me personally, definitely it's like a God thing, being Christian and having those beliefs and that faith in God. It was absolutely a God song. But again, like, mostly everything for me is always comes down to the music. I could be singing about potatoes. It's not until you're in the atmosphere or in the place where you're singing it for a reason that the words become really meaningful. Just when it comes to the music and the writing, I was glad to be able to make something like that, because I haven't written a God-based or Christian song as such. And then to put it out there sort of alongside all my other stuff is, showcasing all sorts, I'm never ready. I always feel like I could put in so much more effort, and it's never finished. I just kind of reach my max capacity where I'm like, I'm so done with this. I'm going to throw the entire setup out the window. I don't want to do it anymore. I've done as much as I can. I've had enough, and that's then the other song. kind
Yeah.
of probably sprung from that. Also, what I learned from that is always being fiercely independent. I like to have things the way I like them. It's hard giving something to someone else. Like, it's one thing to have them or have you guys or the likes of you finish something and just tweak it and mix it, but then to have your actual creative input is something I never thought I would love so much. That's been such a huge part of how enjoyable this has been for me, because I've really, really enjoyed having your actual input with my music, because it's only added to it and taking it to the next level. And I never thought that that would be something I'd be so free to enjoy. And yeah, I'm just so grateful. I just love working with other people and producers.
I think namely like the structure is what guides me a lot. If the structure is pretty much set up just, kind of classically like verse, pre-chorus, chorus, then I can kind of manipulate and work with that. So and then the other thing that will throw me off occasionally is if you send me a full demo, if it has its own artistic input that can almost block my input. So I think Stay was almost dry enough that I could kind of hear maybe what to do with it. Again, I didn't have too much on my plate at the time, so I was like, let's do this. And so I just committed to it and then went for it. So
Boy, did
that was
you. Yeah. Because obviously I just sent you, it had a basic, like a little beat and some pads and, some vocals.
Mm-hmm.
Do you
Um,
just hear something and then have this massive, do you hear it instantly, or how does that work?
sometimes for this one, it actually took me a little bit longer, and the best way for me to get rolling is to strip everything out of the demo and just put like piano and vocals. And like if there was some piece in there that I really liked that you did, I'll keep your stems in there and kind of keep them in the background for a little while until I need them. But I'll strip it down pretty much all the way, and then that's kind of where I get all excited because I'm like, now there's nothing here, so what the opportunities are endless, so I just love to go with it. Obviously I knew that I wanted to do some kind of EDM thing because I got into production because of certain artists. But I once I started getting it all laid out, it just kind of I just a classic EDM structure is just you burn through the verse and pre-chorus, and some people will use the chorus as kind of a build up, which I did for this one. And then, it all depends. Once I get rolling, it doesn't take me all that long because it's like my favorite part of the process. I would love to hand everything off to Steven after it's done being produced. Like mixing and mastering is that's like a different bear, man. But yeah, that's the funnest part of the process for me, just to have something totally bare bones and just have no guidance, just go for it. So I never know what's going to come out of it. Even if I have some idea, I never know what's going to happen. The like songwriting piece and production, usually not so much. Like sound design, sometimes I can be rather limited because I don't really go out of my way to buy like sound plugins other than like kind of the core stuff like compressors and things that help me along the way as far as mixing goes. As far as like sound banks and synthesizers, I don't really have anything. I just use stock Logic things and try to combine it with samples, and I just try to never reuse anything. I might reuse one synth. I just like contradicted myself, but I might use like one synth as like a backer in the next song, but I won't use the same 5 synths in Stay in the next song. So there's always like sound design, like how do I want this to sound? How do I hear it in my head? Like how do I make it happen? The songwriting is just so enjoyable for me. I never really consider it work or anything. So it's not really ever, I would say, like a challenge. Even though like I'm sure I could come up with 100 things over the past 3 4 years that I've had to learn on my own and figure out to make happen, and they can be technical and stuff. And in your song specifically, I didn't really have any issues because I had switched over to a lot of the plugins that really helped me shape the flow of the song, meaning like the side chaining, which I love all the time, and all the little synth, how it does the butterfly and all that stuff. So I have plugins that help me do that at the click of the button now. So I used to do just like obscene stuff that I don't have time for anymore. But no, I don't think it wasn't too much of a challenge. Once it got to mixing, that was the problem. I knew I wanted an EDM song. I always have like a couple references I'm going, you know, back to just to kind of get me started. I knew I wanted like a drop, after the chorus. And then, once I get it through that first chunk, like that's kind of how I write all these EDM type things, is take it from the beginning to the end of the drop. And then once it's there, it pretty much unfolds on its own. I just knew I wanted to build it up and make it big. But with any song, I want to take like all the emotion of it, like that you put into it and the time you put into it, and respect that and just emphasize it. That's my intention behind every production. So
I think when I first heard the song, first of all, I really liked it. And what intrigued me about it is, to be very honest, I'm not great at categorizing. Like, I'm only good at categorizing genres of music that are quite obvious. I think it was only like a couple months ago, somebody else I was working with was like saying, "Oh, this is future bass." It is future bass, right?
yeah.
I still have to ask.
Yeah.
So, like subgenres and things that are like maybe maybe this is a lesson for me straight from the jump of like, I should know more of this. Maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't. But the first thing for me was like, this is really cool. This is something that I feel I'm not used to listening to, but there's a great message and feeling in this song, and I want to help that in whatever way I can. If I hear that in something, then that captivates me. That makes me want to work on it if I can, and if I'm close to the people who are working on it, like if I can help. And if I hear something that can help it, I will do my best to do that. That's like, that was the first impression. Before you get into anything technical or anything else, it's just like, is there a song in here? Yes, this is awesome. This is really cool. I can't quite get my head around what's going on here, but it interests me a lot. And I kind of want to get in there. That's like, they're the initial thoughts. I don't think it was like how the production could improve, because the production is awesome. The sound design again caught my attention so much. I was like, this is really, really cool. The drop was the main thing, and the only way I can describe the drop, the intention behind the drop is amazing. I was like, oh, just one of those. It's just one of those songs where you're like, this is big drop coming up, and then it just kind of was underwhelming. That was the main thing. I listened to it a couple of times and I was saying, this is really hard. There are so many different layers. You got guitar and vocals together, it's quite low key, and then you get a chorus, you get a drop, there's another build, there's another bigger drop later on with the vocals on top of it, and the drops have so many layers in them, and then you're going to put a vocalist on top who has a really big voice that can impact a lot of things that are fighting for space. So from the mixing standpoint, yeah, that's a difficult job. When you, for want of a better word, create a monster like that, that's happened to me so many times where, I don't know, I just like need to pull in somebody to go, hey, can you just, I'm lost. Can you just listen to this? And thankfully, I've got people who can do that. And just or I need a vocalist, or I need a on another track of Dani, I need a guitarist. Rather than me, sit down and do it, I got somebody who's doing it like all day, every day, session guitarist, just knock it out in like an hour and send it to me, and then I can just keep working on the song. So like that's the beauty of having people like that you can call upon and work with. It was pretty clear to me that the only way with this song, not the only way, but just my thought process was, this is going to be a great song to collaborate on with somebody. Like actually try and get your thought process of how everything was going together, like we did, doing sessions together, like mixing it collaboratively. I don't think that song could have gotten to the point that it did without doing that. I think if we were going back and forth over email, it would have sucked, would have drained the life out of it, and we would have ended up being like, we don't get each other. But because we spent time to get each other and then work together, it turned into this like collaborative thing that just kind of grew. And yeah, it really helps, and it really helps me a lot of the time to have somebody there that can actually bounce ideas off. I know that that's daunting to some people, to sit there and have every fader move or EQ choice or whatever examined, and there were suggestions that I would have made to you or that sucked, no question, or ideas that I was like, how about we try this, that just didn't work. But we were both open to trying stuff and giving it a go, and I think that's what led to it evolving a little bit more and being a fuller sound that we managed to, I think, and I hope, capture. I made the drop too big. I was like, this drop needs to be huge, and then I made it way too big. So that affected the other parts of the mix. This is a fairly standard thing when you get stems. Is oftentimes you may want more of the frequency range of certain sounds, and they're not there because they've just been carved out or whatever. We did hit those challenges, but again, the beauty of having you right there is like I could ask you questions about this, and I'd say, hey, did you have a high pass or a low pass on this, or what was going on? And I could hear your thought process behind it and be able to make decisions and say, no, we should leave it that way. That was your intention. I don't want to mess with that, because if we add that in there, that's going to mess this up or that up. Or we say, let's use that sound, but let me give you more of what was in there originally, or let me give you a new sound that will complement that. There was nothing that I listened to that I went, this is going to be a problem. I really loved your vocal processing as well. Most of the time, because I love vocal production so much, I will go back to the vocals a lot, but I really didn't want to mess with what you'd done. And I felt that if I kept all your vocal processing and then went back to the dry vocal and tried to blend them, I think I would have ruined the magic of what you'd done already. So I just didn't touch it. And I thought that would be a challenge, but it wasn't. It's one of those things where you have to say, I'm going to leave well enough alone here. If I start digging and being like, I'm so great at vocal production, I will ruin the vibe that you've created. So I left it alone, and I rarely leave vocals alone. And yeah, I'm still really happy with that decision. So mastering, for me, I've gone through many iterations of a mastering process and figuring out what way to do things. And I used to have like very set ideas of where you need to have your levels and whatever else. And because I spend a lot of time creating work for broadcast, for TV, that they have specific standards and you can't go above certain thresholds. I very much came from that sort of idea, and that doesn't really exist in music. Obviously you can clip stuff and it can sound distorted to hell, but like generally you can go a bit nuts with stuff if you want to, and that can sound really bad, or it can sound really good, or somewhere in the middle. You have the levels to which the various platforms will turn your music down if it's too loud, but they don't limit it. So this whole idea of a loudness penalty in this situation, I was like, all of the references that we have, so referencing is very important to me, are that loud. So this genre of music requires this level of loudness. And already I can hear people being like, people listen to this would be like, oh, requires that level of loudness, whatever. It's such a tricky thing to talk about, but there was just something about that master that we agreed on, like, this is the one. We tried different versions and we tried different ways of doing it. And you actually had to tell me to stop. And that's the biggest challenge, I think, for most musicians a lot of the time. Like when you're working under pressure and you've got very specific deadlines, you just have to be like, okay, it's done to the absolute best of my ability at this very moment in time. When you have a little bit of leeway, you can keep going back and messing and tweaking stuff. And it can be two things. It can be indecision and just not being sure of yourself, or it can be a sign of growth that like throughout the project you've actually improved and your ears are better and blah 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 and so on. In this situation, I was like, I get this now. The thing that I started out with going, I'm not sure about this, not that I'm not sure about it, it's like, this is new to my ears, I need to get into this. By the end of it, I was like, I totally get this song and I can hear little things that, but I did get to the point where it was down to like minutia that didn't make any sense. That's something that everybody needs to kind of take on board. Like the perfectionist mindset is not a good one to have. It's, perfect is the lowest possible standard, right? Because you're never going to achieve it. For me, I hate letting stuff go when I know like I can hear that thing, and if it's there and it's obvious, I want to go and fix it. But if there's stuff that's like not obvious, or I listen back to it and I go, oh, I could keep working on this, could also completely ruin it. So you gotta be so careful at that, especially at the mastering stage where it's like this thing is like pretty much ready to go. Yeah, you don't want to set it back, and you're gonna annoy your collaborators at that stage, right?
Well, guys, I can't thank you both enough for everything. You've both been fundamental to my own growth as an artist and producer, and I'm excited to have you guys as a team, as friends, as collaborators, as everything. You've both been great people, and I'm super excited to have you for the foreseeable future. So stick around, please.
Yeah, obviously the feeling is absolutely mutual, and thank you both for putting your faith in me to get songs over the line. Thank you.
I can't wait for the interview in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time. See, where are we now? I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
All right. Have a great day to you both.
See you
You
guys.
too. Good night.
See
And
ya.
we'll be attached about all this, I'm sure.
Breaking down the walls I built to hide. Even